You know where I was last year that doesn't exist anymore? Black Sand Beach in Iceland. We got the photos of the Black Beach and then, I get the notification in January that it's all washed away.
Before Trump even got it.
Yeah. No, he's after Greenland.
He's after Greenland. But Iceland will be next.
The 62nd state. We've got Vince Craig with us, who's the author of Never Get Off the Train. Welcome to the show. Yeah, this is the book.
There you go, there's the book.
So explain, because you'll explain it better than I will, what the book's about and how it relates to you.
Well, the book is pretty much a semi-fictional account of my time over in Ukraine. I went there when the war started in 2022. I was there probably about 3 weeks after the war started. I went over there and I ended up doing 2 trips that year, came back, and based on all those experiences, I thought, well, somebody should write something about this, and my background is as an historian, so I thought, well, this would be a good way to contribute to the total history of that conflict, because all you ever hear is what's happening on in the news, or what some historian at Oxford might write. So I thought I'd write this, and I did that in 2023, and then I went back again in 2024 with a couple of friends to do some more training. And pretty much we were working over there as foreign military advisors and working alongside Americans, Brits, Kiwis, Norwegian boys, Danes, the whole lot. And it seemed pivotal at the time when I first went over there, because I was seeing what was happening on the TV. And what really, sort of affected me a lot was seeing some old babushka there, being taught how to use an AK-47. Yeah. And I'm thinking, geez, like these people need some real training. So got on to the internet, social media, trying to find out what's going on. And there was a lot of blind alleys. So I just thought, well, look, I'll buy a plane ticket. So got a plane ticket, ended up in Warsaw because you couldn't fly into Ukraine for obvious reasons. And next day, I go to the Ukrainian embassy in Warsaw. I knocked on the door and I said, my name's Craig. I'm from Australia. I'm here to help you guys. What do you want me to do? And the guy just went, closed the door and disappeared. And I'm thinking, I've driven, basically flown all the way over here. Yep. And there happened to be a sort of volunteer tent for Rotary or somebody like that. And I went up to them and I told them the story, and they said, look, go to the border, Medica. There's a border there. Go there. There's tents. You'll find something to do. Yep. So went back to the hotel room, crashed out for 16 hours, got up the next day, went to the train station, and I happened to see a couple of American boys, a couple of big guys. One guy had his EMT patch with Texas on there. And I said, you guys going to the border? Yeah, we're going to the border. I said, well, might be a good idea, stay together, strengthen numbers. So anyway, we get on the train. Then 2 Brits got on the train, and they were actually going to pick up a woman and sponsor her back to the UK. So we all sort of just joined group, and we get going, and we were supposed to change our train. And we sort of get going, and the train sort of kept going, and we're supposed to be getting off at this stop, and so we ended up missing our connecting train, so we had to go back down the line and wait for this other train, which put us on the border at a place called Shemish. Yep. It sort of starts with a P, but everybody calls it Shemish. And we got there really late, and we're thinking, oh, geez, like, what are we going to do? And so everybody said, well, we'll walk to the border, which was probably about 16 kilometres. So we thought we'll start walking. So we got rucksacks, bags and everything. And we get going till about 1 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's really starting to sort of feel it. So we're looking around, is there a barn? So in the end we decided there was a copse of trees, so we got underneath that, got in our sleeping bags, and then I wake up about 5:30 in the morning, so I have a can of beans and I'm eating this, and next minute the police pull up. Passports, okay. This other guy I'm with, Gary, the EMT guy, he's snoring. And I'm going, Gary, wake up. Gary, the cops are here. So, and because the thing was, we were sort of in this little village, and everybody's driving past, and we just look like vagabonds, gypsies, whatever, And we're thinking, oh, geez, like, this is no good. So anyhow, we get all these passports and they take it. I'm thinking, well, I need that, you know. Well, why are you here? And we said, oh, we're here to, you know, medical support. Okay, so they give us the passports back. Well, everybody packs their gear so fast, and then we keep going down the road. And then another police car stopped us. What are you guys doing here? We're going to the border. So after that, we managed to get a cab, but that took us 2-3 kilometres to the border. And it was nothing like I thought a refugee setup would be.
Yeah.
I expected everything in an orderly fashion and people doing, you know, what they're supposed to be doing. And there's a cardinal. He's walking past blessing people. There's a guy on a unicycle throwing balls. People are giving chocolates to kids. There's people there for dogs, refugee
Chaos.
dogs. There's all sorts of things. And I'm going, this is crazy. So old Gary, he goes wandering off to try and get us a gig. So in the end, he comes back about 2-3 hours later, and we said, hey, you know, what's happening? And he goes, well, I sat in there for an hour and a half. They gave me a coffee, and then the head of Red Cross Poland turns up and he says, I want you to leave.
Oh.
I want you to leave. Okay. And the thing is, we soon realised, even though it's a humanitarian crisis, a lot of people don't want to share their toys. They want all the glory. They want us. So in the end, we go back, and there was an American guy there, and we said, hey, where can we stay? And he says, well, look, if you go down to the car park, there's all these tents. All these French guys have just left everything. So it was like a scene out of Dunkirk. Like it was just stuff just left abandoned and everything. So we went down there, managed to sort of put a couple of tents together, and that's where we stayed for a week and a half.
Yep.
And in that time, people came and went, and what we were doing over daytime was pretty much guarding. It was like a big circus tent.
Yeah.
And that was designed for refugee women and kids to stay in. No males. This was to give them some time out.
Yep.
And our job over daytime was pretty much protecting them from pedophiles and human traffickers.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of people that were turning up at the border with signs going, oh, I will take you to Germany, you know, and it's like, well, and we actually received word that, you know, people were being taken to be killed and things like this. So that was our job, was to stop anybody getting in there. And then when we weren't doing that, we were basically getting shopping trolleys, filling it full of pasta, water, going over the border from Poland into Ukraine and giving, because there was just a throng of people trying to get in. And of course, bureaucracy taking their time. People are standing in the snow or on a bus for hours waiting to come in. So we were giving them water and giving them food and things like this. And then we'd come back, go sleep in our tent at the night and do it the next day.
Yeah.
But even then, things started to dry up. And I can remember seeing an American guy who came over, and he's trying to get a job. And in the end, he started picking up rubbish. We said, what are you doing, mate? And he goes, well, I've got to do something here. And so that's what he was doing. And while you're there, you're seeing all these young men and even old men got their military gear on, and they're going, because as soon as you go over the border into Ukraine, there was a recruiting stand for the Ukrainian Legion, International Legion.
Yep.
So these guys were going there, signing up, and the next minute they're being taken away to camps to be part of the Legion.
Far out.
So it was, it's pretty full on, and a lot of dodgy looking guys. Like, you know, if you went out on your own somewhere, you know, you'd probably be stabbed. Because it's like everything, everybody's preying off somebody, you know. And there were sort of these sort of guys there, just, you know, you can see that they're, you know, looking for some sheep, sort of walk by and things like that. So after about a week and a half there, as I said, things were drying up and we were getting a little bit stale. So that's when we decided to go into Ukraine. And again, it's like the old boy network. Somebody knew somebody who knew somebody. Make a phone call. Oh, if you're here at this time, you can get a vehicle and they'll take you. And we ended up getting a vehicle and going to Lviv from there. And then from there, we stopped at a few other places, which was pretty crazy. And then we ended up in Kyiv after that. And those were the days when, like, there was nobody. It was like something out of I Am Legend. You know, with Will Smith. There was just tank traps. You know, you'd see people with, you know, weapons, but nobody on the roads. Everything was all sort
empty.
of Well, they'd only just fought off a Russian invasion,
Yeah,
and they
correct.
didn't know what was going to happen next.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
that was the initial part, but that was the whole idea of the book, is to sort of let people know what was really happening out there from our point of view,
Yeah, from a boots on the ground
from
perspective.
boots on the ground point of view.
Yeah.
And most of the guys I came across were ex-military, and the trouble is, you've got a lot of lost souls over there.
Mm.
You've got people there that have worked in Walmart in America for 10 years, they're ex-Afghan, Iraq vets, and
Yeah.
they're sort of going, well, this sort of sucks.
They're restless.
So I think I might go over.
Mm.
And so there was a lot of guys over there for good reasons, but
Yeah.
a lot of guys trying to sort of get some mileage so that when the war's over, might get citizenship, might get some recognition, might get a job. And I know guys over there that have sort of managed to sort of, find girlfriends, Ukrainian girlfriends.
Yeah.
And they're staying there for the, for the long run. So
Yeah.
that's.
Wow. Bit of a mix of people.
But our main job over there when we first went there, James, was to pretty much train guys.
Yeah.
And the training was like, seriously, I sort of see the Ukrainian military back then in a similar way to Australia was in 1914 in the first. We were a militia, bush
Not
sort
ready.
of army, not ready.
Yeah.
Okay, you had a small core of people, probably from the Boer War still, that were professional soldiers, but a lot of these guys are a bit like that.
Yeah.
And so, they're really bad as far as training goes. Like
Yeah.
later on, I think on my third trip over there, it took nearly 2 weeks to train guys on how to do safety on their weapons.
Far out.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they would have weapons with little bits of string sticking out, and I'd say, well, what's this? Oh, that lets me know that I have no round in my chamber. I said, well, that might let you know, but that doesn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
I said, this is why, and the thing is, the Ukrainians are very smart.
Yeah, yeah.
Very smart people, good education system, very smart. Unlike the Iraqis that I've trained in the past, they'd want to go to sleep on you after 15 minutes.
Yeah.
These Ukrainians would be, why? They've got 1,000 questions. Why are we doing this? Why are we going there? What sort of thing?
What's the purpose
and we'd
of-
sort of say, well, guys, I don't really want to have to get you to write to Alexei's mother to say why you shot him in the head
Yeah.
because you didn't clear your weapon properly.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like. But it takes 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And the units aren't like our army, where there is a standard right across. In the Ukrainian system, you have some good units, like groups like Azov, okay? And then you get units that, like one unit that I know of, the commander, he was, I think he had a podcast, he was popular on social media.
Those podcasters.
Yeah, those guys. And they're sort of regimental sergeant major. He could
Yeah.
do a lot of heaves.
Yeah.
And he had big handlebars and everybody liked him.
Yeah.
And those were the guys that ran that unit.
That was the
Or
qualification.
if you had a brother or a cousin who was high up in the government,
Yeah.
or you're the sort of person that ran 3 petrol stations, they thought, hey, that guy's got leadership ability, so you get put in charge of a unit.
Yeah.
So they've got an officer corps, but very, very loose.
Yeah.
I can remember doing a range shoot because this officer, major, been to Iraq with the Ukrainian military, couldn't run a range practice to save his life.
Yeah, wow.
In our army, lance corporals, senior
Yeah.
privates know how to do that.
Yeah.
And these guys have got no idea, and they wonder why people are getting killed and stuff like that because they're just a bit free and easy. So you've got good units,
Yeah.
and then you've got guys that have been to the front and they've survived, and they think, I know everything. It's like, mate,
Because I've
you're-
been there and back again.
You've survived,
Yeah.
not because your own ability. You've just been lucky
Yeah.
to survive.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of the standard.
So go into a little bit of your background. What's your military experience? Where did you, come across all this stuff? And then what made you decide to walk into an active war zone?
Well, I joined the army the day Elvis Presley died. 16th
right.
of August 1977.
Yeah.
And for months, nobody knew. Like, did he kill himself? Did somebody shoot Elvis?
Yeah.
We found out it was lifestyle and drugs and
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like this. So I joined the army, and then cut a long story short, I sort of served in the infantry battalions, the Royal Australian Regiment. I was an instructor for a while there at our infantry centre, and then I applied for the Special Air Service Regiment, did the selection course, and then I was in K-Troop, which was a freefall troop.
Yep.
So I did about 4.5 years there.
And what does freefall troop mean?
Oh, freefall parachuting,
Yep.
climbing. So we're the guys. Yeah, you have water operations. So all the guys that wear, aqualung and all that stuff.
Yep.
And do that thing, and then you've got the guys that are vehicle mounted, and they do climbing as well. And the freefall guys we do halo jumps. I think highest jump I ever did was like 23,000 feet on oxygen.
Far out.
We were working with the American Green Beret up in Exmouth.
Yeah.
They came out from Okinawa. So we did stuff like this, and you're working with a lot of the best people in the world, British SAS, US Army Rangers. I managed to go over to Guam, and I was working with the US Navy SEALs, who I sort of think are probably on par, with our guys.
Yeah.
So in the end, that sort of, back then, not a lot was happening. Being in the counter-terror squadron was sort of like seen as being the big thing. And then I sort of got out, and my wife originally was from England, and we went over to England, and I came back, and I thought, if I don't go to school, I'm not going to be doing much for the rest of my life. So I ended up going to uni, and again, to cut a long story short, I ended up getting a PhD in history.
Yep.
So I finished that over here in Perth, and so I was doing that, and but then I had this crazy idea in the 2000s of joining the Air Force, and that was a really bad decision.
Yeah.
So I won't go into that anymore. That really wasn't. That was probably wasn't great. I did all right and everything, but and then I joined the Army Reserve, and I was just going to finish off my 15 years sort of service, because that was sort of something I'd aimed for, and then it looked like I was going to Afghanistan, because they were trying to backfill a commando deployment. I just missed out on that on a couple of days for a whole multitude of reasons.
Yep.
And pretty much I thought, well, that's sort of the end of my sort of military stint. But then look what happens. Like I ended up going to over to Iraq. And that was largely because my wife was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and she lost her job. I was out of a job, and I'm trying to pay off a house, and I really didn't have a lot of confidence in Centrelink to help me, keep that going. So pretty much I went over there and made some money, and the Australian government took a lot of that on my return, which they do. And but it was one of the best things I ever did, because the trouble is, for a lot of people that joined the military in the 70s, 80s and 90s, like not a lot was happening. And it's a bit like training for the Olympics, but you never get the gig.
Yeah.
And so, and regardless of what people say, like, our army is pretty well trained. All the guys that sort of trained myself and my friends, they'd all been to, Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam. They were really good soldiers, knew their stuff. And so, I had that in my DNA, and so I went over to Iraq, and that was great. Had a great time over there. Trained people, felt like I was making a difference, and then the war starts in Ukraine, and I just couldn't get over watching the newsreels and seeing places being bombed, and as I said, old women being taught how to use weapons.
It's everyone in the citizenry that needs to take up arms. It's heartbreaking.
It is, and you're thinking, geez, and the irony is sort of when I joined the army back in the 70s, the Cold War was still on.
Yeah.
And Russia and China were sort of seen as the countries that we'd probably fight against. So, I've gone the long way, but I'm still over there helping these guys fight the Russians.
Yeah.
But, the only trouble that I did find also over there is that a lot of the smaller towns and villages are the ones where they're doing most of the recruiting.
Yeah.
And I think now the age is, I'm not sure, 22, 23, and you can get conscripted.
Yeah.
And what we were saying to a lot of the guys that we work with was like, try and get yourself into a a drone unit or something like this. Don't just go up and be in the meat grinder, because, you know, I've known guys that were sort of sent to units, and like the officers just didn't care. Go take that hill. Oh, how we're supposed to do that? I don't care. I told you to go take that hill.
Just do it. Yeah.
I've got 200 rounds of ammunition. I don't care. Go and take that hill. And that's the sort of stuff that was, you know, coming back. And you're thinking, well, geez. And the trouble is, being so short of men, you know, there were guys, you know, going to recruiting, and they're going, oh, well, I was a nuclear physicist in civvy life. That's all right. You can be in the assault brigade. It's like, what? But that's how short they are of men. But you go driving around Kyiv and you see, you know, young people there dining out and riding their skateboards and things.
Different
and you're
world.
thinking, well, shouldn't you be helping? Not some guy that they've grabbed from a village who has a very poor grasp of, you know, the current situation, but they're gonna send him off to the front.
And regional communities, I guess. I'm not comparing the value of a life of a city person versus a regional person, but the people in the regions, you know, they're working the farm, they're integral to those communities, and they're being ripped out as well.
Exactly. So these are the people that are, you know, they've got the burden. And so I understand that. The thing is too, the feeling was they didn't want to send all the young people to get killed, because they need the young people for the next generation to make Ukraine go forward. So unfortunately, like I've got photos where I'm standing there with two other guys, and we've got a combined age of 180. Yeah, and it's like, I think you're a bit long in the tooth, and like some of these guys are just so unfit.
Yeah,
you know, and you know the food is pretty poor. There's not a lot of protein, not much of an exercise, you know, regime, and you know they're expected to, you know, to win battles. And we're sort of thinking at the time, like, geez, if these guys are bad, the Russians must be really bad. Yeah, because you know they're still kicking goals as opposed to the Russians. So, so it's a lot of disappointment all round. And but yeah, as far as going over there, I had a friend the other day there that I was over on my first sort of trip, and he was looking about going back. And I said, mate, you've done all you can. You know, I said, if you go over there, they're just going to put you in an assault brigade. So I said, you might as well hang yourself in the garage. At least your family know where your body is. Whereas if you go over there, that's what's going to happen. You're just going to be gone. So, you know, some of the guys like from Australia, New Zealand, Britain, who are, you know, good operators of the special forces or, you know, high-end sort of military, you know, they're sort of lucky they do get embedded with some of the better units, but like they're still getting killed. Yeah. Like, so.
You mentioned drone warfare before. How important has that become in the modern battlefield?
That's a game changer.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'd heard of it before I went over there, but when you see these people and like they can get a drone and it can go through bushes, you know, they can lob into a tank and blow a tank up. And when you think how much does a tank cost as opposed to one
drone,
one
$30,
drone,
$40 drone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know the Ukrainians have been putting drones. They make like jet skis into floating bombs. Yeah. You know, so they're so smart, and they're right. You know, I believe now even the Australian military is looking at what Ukraine has done because they're leading the world with this. So as I said before, they are so smart, these people. Yeah. And, you know, people sort of think, oh, well, you know, the might of Russia and everything. But, like, you've got to remember these people are fighting for the homeland.
Yeah, correct.
Where are they going to go if they get beat? And whether, you know, I met a lot of people that didn't like Zelensky, you know, because, again, they're still very traditional. The previous guy was your traditional politician. Yeah. Then comes Zelensky,
who's a comedian.
Lawyer, comedian, got a game show, uses social media, bang, wins the election by a landslide, and then look what happens. The war starts. So you've only got to look at the guy now, and he's aged.
Yeah, correct. The weight of an entire nation does, you know, sit heavy.
And I give him one thing, as opposed to a lot of politicians, he's out there with his cap in hand trying to get support from anybody and everybody around the world. Yep. Okay, how many politicians would do that? So, you know, my hat's off to the guy. Like, he's trying to do the best
trying
he
his best.
can under the circumstances. And he could have cut and run like a lot of them.
Yep.
But he didn't. You know?
Well, it was like the Lebanese government all just up and left after the Beirut explosion. They all just
I'm out of here.
Nah,
I'm gone.
It's
See you
too
later.
much. See ya. Yeah. So you know, and that's a one-off thing, hopefully. But that's a one-off thing, and this guy's been fighting a war for how many years now, and he's still there.
And I think a lot of people sort of like, even now, like I'm still helping Ukrainian people trying to raise money. When I was over there, I was with a unit. Their vehicle got destroyed.
Yep.
And these guys said, we need another unit, another vehicle for our unit sort of thing. I said, just leave it with me.
Yep.
So in the end, I contacted all my ex-military mates and I said, any chance of throwing a couple $100? Not a problem.
Yep.
They got all this money. There you go, boys. Here's
Awesome.
a vehicle.
Awesome.
And one of the things that really struck me was on my first trip over there was down by Krashadik.
Yeah.
Sort of, it's like the main road, sort of in Kyiv, and there's an underground railway station, and in there they sell souvenirs and stuff for your phones, and you can get a haircut and things like this.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'll get a couple of badges or something to bring home, and there was a store next to it, and the souvenir store wasn't open. So I said to the woman, I said, what time do they open? And she said, 10 o'clock. She said, well, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Australia. What are you doing over here? I said, well, I'm over here to help you people. You're not alone.
Yeah.
And she started crying.
Yeah.
So I started crying, and it's just like, as I said to him, and that's another reason why we went back again in 2024, because it was like, people are starting to forget all about this, and they still need the help. So if nothing else, they know they're not on their own.
Yep.
And that, to me, that is a big thing. When you're just on your own, the world is a pretty horrible place. But if you know you've got friends out there and people supporting you, well, it
makes a difference.
It does make a big difference.
It makes a difference.
So,
what was the most difficult day of your time in Ukraine?
pretty well, I'd say on my first trip, I thought I was going to die over there.
Yep.
Because we'd been doing this training, and of course, getting hot and sweaty and stuff like this, and I got a cold. And it was a very long. They said, "Oh, spring is coming," and it's just like, well, when's spring going to get here? Because we're talking really, really cold weather.
Yeah.
And this is like February, March, and it was still really cold. And I got all sweaty, and I got a cough, and I started getting very sick. And we went off to do this training at this other camp just outside of Kyiv. My friend Gary, the EMT medic, he managed to give me some antibiotics and painkillers and things like this. So in the end, we get there, and it's like 8 o'clock at night. Supposed to get a meal. I couldn't eat anything, and we're supposed to having a debrief. And I'm saying, guys, I've got to go to bed. I am so crook. So I get my sleeping bag, and I just went in there. Next thing I remember is probably about 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Somebody's got my eyelid open like this and flicking, with the pen to see, and I could hear these guys. And we were lucky; we had an ex-US Navy corpsman, medic, and the Kiwi guy I was with, Mikey, said, "Look, Craig's in a bad way. You better have a look at him." And he said, "Okay, do this. Give him some more of these drugs. Keep an eye on him." But look, I went to bed that night thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it. The next day, I was really, really crook. And so I was like that for probably 2 days. And then they brought an ambulance out for me.
Far out.
And they put a drip in me because I was so dehydrated. I couldn't cough up the phlegm. So, Gary and this other guy put a drip in me and took me back to Kyiv. And then we came back about a week after that because my friend Mikey, he had to get home for a reason. So we came back. I was back for about a month, got over the pneumonia, and then I bought another plane ticket, went back to Ukraine and did 3 months. And we were sort of coming into their summer then, which was really good.
Easier.
So, again, I landed in Warsaw, got a bus that takes like 20 hours or something. It stops every 5 minutes for the smokers.
Yeah.
Smoke like chimney over there.
Yeah, right.
Cigarettes are $2 a pack.
Okay,
so
right.
people smoke like it's going.
There's no
non-stop.
excise tax.
No. So anyway, we get to Warsaw, and I was with this Canadian guy who was a guy that actually does bomb disposal and things like this. So we get there, and I'm in this sort of bus depot, and I get on the phone. I told the boys, I said I'm here, and they picked me up, and they said, where are you going? And I said, I'll just go in the room. He said, we're going to Gorodisha in 10 minutes, do some training. I said, well, if you've got 10 minutes, let me know. I'll just get my gear together. So I'm throwing stuff out, put it in a bag, and we went up there and we did some training up there, and that's the way it began on my second trip. But I was very lucky sort of halfway through that, because it's like, as a foreign military advisor, when you're over in Ukraine, it's a bit like Australian Idol. When you go to a group, you sort of got to do your song and dance, and then they go, yeah, I like this guy, because there's so many people over there that promise a lot and deliver very little. Yeah. So, we went with this group east, but I just had a gut feeling. I'm thinking, no, I need to be somewhere else. So I came back to Kyiv. I ended up working with a group called Task Force Yankee. Yeah. And they were like an NGO group, and, we were doing training, with them. Yeah. So we ended up going back to a place called Yavoriv, which was near Lviv, which is where I think 60, 70 Legionnaire guys were killed.
Yeah, right.
Early on. Yeah. And so we were there, and we'd only been there 10 minutes doing our training, and next minute, okay, so they wander into the woods, and they got these trenches built. And so we go into the woods, and we're sitting there, and these Ukrainian boys there, and they're offering us cigarettes. And next minute, some of these Ukrainian boys are wandering off, going to where there's a fire going in the middle of an air raid. And I said to these guys, who are those guys? And he goes, Suicide Squad. Okay, and next minute music starts going, and somebody's down there singing some Ukrainian folk song. Yeah. And we're going, yeah, okay. So we all go down there, and everybody's all... And then the air raid stops, and we go back and start doing training again. It's just, it's like being in a Monty Python film. It is surreal at times. Yeah. It really is. You just can't believe. You think, I didn't think things happen like this in war, but yeah.
And what's the feeling when that air raid siren goes off?
Well, for me, unless it's close, I don't sort of worry about it so much. Like, we end up doing a training gig at a place called Mykolaiv, which is was a lot closer to the Russian border. And they were, well, I wouldn't say they were on the outskirts, but they were hitting the town with a view to taking it over. And we were staying at this sort of Airbnb place. And, we had to change our clothes to sort of before we got out of the vehicle, so people wouldn't see that we were military. But like anybody with half a brain would go, hey, these are military guys, what are they doing here? So we were there one night, and I think 3 nights running, the air raid sirens went off. The first night, some rockets landed close by, and I'm just lying on my bed, okay? Yeah. And the other 2 guys are in this sort of middle room with helmets on. And I'm saying, guys, like, when it gets close, I'll let you know. So anyway, 3rd night comes, and next minute, boom, boom, boom. I put my helmet on, because I'm thinking, but it's sort of like hit and miss. Like, you 2 things get you killed: bad luck and fuck up. Yeah. And like, if you happen to be there and a thing lands on top of you, well, you won't
not much
know.
You can do.
You won't know much about it anyway.
Yeah, the helmet won't do much.
And the interesting thing is sort of, it depends. Like, I've got a bit of a fatalistic sort of approach to these things in life. Like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I can remember the next day after that, we were going back out to this range to help these guys train, and there was a convoy, and we were going down the road. Next minute, the rear vehicle was sent flying. We're going, what's going on? Have they been hit by an RPG or a rocket or something? No, a vehicle T-boned. This other vehicle went through the lights thing too. There was a guy in it. He got killed. And the reason why he got killed, didn't have a seatbelt on. Yep. So his head got crushed. Yeah. So, you survive rockets and things, and God knows what happening to you. But if that guy had to put his seatbelt on, and here he is, joined the Ukraine military to fight against Russia, and he dies in a car accident.
Yeah,
so
far out.
It all, yeah. So look, I don't worry about it so much, and I think a lot of the training kicks in because I had a similar situation when I was over in Iraq there, and we got rocketed, and as it turned out, they nearly hit the mosque.
Yeah, right.
And I think they blew up a garbage truck. So, but you know, it's like if it's going to land on you, it's going to land on you. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yep.
But it's having that situational awareness to be able to sort of say, well, yeah, I think I need to be here now, or and like as we try to explain to these, you know, Ukrainians, always cut your target size in half. Don't stand up when you can kneel. Don't kneel when you can lie down. Get behind a tree properly. All these sorts of things that is sort of instilled into our military. But these guys, they're all learning this for the first time.
100%.
So it's not natural for them.
So would there be a different, I don't know how to frame this. Would you say the feeling is very different in Ukraine versus Iraq?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What's the difference?
Well, the big difference is that they're fighting for their survival, whereas in Iraq and Afghanistan, they want other people to fight for them.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it in the nutshell. And the trouble is, you know, you're fighting, you know, in a country where different religion, different culture, you might as well be on the other side of the moon.
Yep.
Whereas, like, you go to a European country, I was amazed at how sophisticated Ukraine is. I think they come second as far as, you know, being the most corrupt, you know, country in Europe.
Yeah.
Russia is number one.
Yeah.
But, sophisticated. Like, they've got shopping malls that make our shopping malls look like, you know, dirt farms. Like, seriously, and as I said, the people are so smart. The women dress like, it's sort of a bit like going back in time in a certain way, because, you know, you don't sort of see people getting around with holes in their, you know, jeans and, you know, like grungy look. You don't see that. And as I said, the people are just, you know, so, and good, you know, easy to get on with, got a great sense of humour.
Yeah.
Great sense of humour. And, it's just so different. But the trouble is you have this mental image of old crones, you know, riding donkeys with bales of wheat in black. And then when you go there, you're going, oh, my God, there's a Bentley, there's a Rolls Royce, there's people with money, there's, you know, major roads. There's just, like they got the best, you know, like servos going.
Yeah.
Like these are clean.
Yeah.
Because they get these, you know, it's not like us. As soon as you get to 50 or so, nobody wants to employ you. When you get older there, it's like, oh, well, we got a job for you in my service station.
Yeah.
Mopping the floors, and, you know, you get some money and everybody's happy. It's all clean. It's just like, well, that's not a bad idea. It gives people purpose.
Yeah, 100% they get something to do.
Everybody's got something to do. So, it's really a real sophisticated place. And, like, you know, I'd like to go back, you know, if I can. Not to train anymore. I'm too old for that now.
Yeah.
But it's like when the war's over, I've got a lot of friends that, you know, would like to go back there and catch up with our Ukrainian friends. And they looked after me like you wouldn't believe. Like, it was just amazing. I ended up doing some training at a place near Sumy, and the unit there, they ended up invading Russia.
Yeah.
When they went from there, and
counterattack.
I got an email, you know, like from one of the boys, and there's a picture of them in Russian territory holding up the Ukraine flag, and I'm going, "This is my boys! Oh, I'm so proud of them." You know, that's what it felt like.
Yeah, well done, lads. Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of those guys are dead now.
Yeah.
But,
far out.
But and they've got a lot of big cities. Lviv is amazing, beautiful. The architecture, you know, the history. You know, people don't sort of realise that, like, Ukraine has been around for sort of like, you know, 980 AD or something like this. Like, they go back a long way.
Yeah.
When Moscow was still a swamp.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. So it's a very sophisticated city. Great to go to.
Do you think the war will be over soon?
I don't know. I was hoping that when Trump got in, that, you know, he'd make a difference, but, like, I don't think he has. And you know, that interview with Zelensky, and here they are arguing, and it's like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I just was really so surprised, you know. So I think Europe is still bankrolling, you know, Ukraine and giving them weapons. I know Germany, France, UK is.
Yep.
But, you know, you know, America's the big player.
The linchpin. Yep.
And, you know, I don't know their relationship with Putin and Russia, but Russia's lost so many people, it's not funny. And you can't tell me that there's not somebody in Russia who knows a brother, a cousin, a father has been killed.
Yeah, correct.
So, you know, we're not talking... I think it's over a million soldiers killed now.
Far out.
That's how bad it is over there. So, and for a country, Ukraine's only 40 million against a country that's, 160 million.
Yeah, everyone's going to know somebody.
So, but even right at the end when I was there, you know, you'd be walking down sort of in Kyiv, the next minute a whole procession would come by,
Yeah.
you know, and everybody would stop and put their hand over their heart or, you know, pray, and they take them and like out front of St. Michael's Church, they've just got photos of people that have been dead since 2014 in Crimea.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, men and women, police, everybody, and you're just going, how can a country sustain this for so long without... But they're tough.
Yeah.
They are the toughest people I've come across, Ukrainians. They're the sort of people you want to fight with any day.
Yep.
And when I was over there, as I wrote in my book, I ended up experiencing a thing called banya, which is like Ukrainian sort of sauna, okay? And oh my God, these guys, they have it, you know, racked up a notch, you know? And I'm sitting in there and I'm going, oh my God, I've got to get out of here, you know? Like I'm an asthmatic now. I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
And my Ukrainian friend said to me, he says, we have it so hot that men just sit in here grunting to try and force out the pain.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just so hot. And the last time I was there, I went there with his friend again and his son, and, you know, we had banya. And basically you go in and like, and it's not just in a sauna.
And melt,
What they do is you lie down there once you're hot, then they get things like, it's like oak leaves.
Yeah.
And they put it in water and they sort of flick you.
Yeah, right.
And it's like these little barbs. And then they rub it on you, and they do it on your feet, and on your back, and on your buttocks. And I said to him, I said, how long's your son been doing this? Oh, since he was 5. He's about 9.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, oh my God, like, and then you jump into the, you know, the cool pool, and you feel like your brain's going to explode, and then you get back into the thing again, and then you have a bit of a break, and you go drink some lager, which is probably the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you go back into
Straight
it again.
back in.
Oh, but, you know, these are tough boys, tough as. And I was lucky when I was over there, I met one of the Klitschko brothers, from heavyweight champion. He's the mayor of Kyiv.
Kiev, yeah.
And we were sort of at St. Michael's, and this is something we would never do in Australia, but they had all these knocked out Russian vehicles, and they put them in front of the church so people could sort of see them and have a look sort of thing. I could never imagine in Fed Square putting knocked out tanks with bits of sort of material
uniforms
still there
stuff
from people that had died, you know. And so old Klitschko was there, and my friend said, oh, you want to go and try and, you know, get a photo? So I go up to his bodyguard, like as if this guy needs a bodyguard, right?
Yeah, correct.
And I said, can I get a photo? And he goes, yeah, go and see me, you know. So I go there, I said, can I get a photo? He goes, yeah, no worries. So we get this photo. This guy's a monster. He's a monster.
Yeah.
And I look like like a hobbit or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's just amazing.
Big dude.
Oh, big dudes, but, you know, there's something about them, you know, whether it goes back to that sort of Cossack tradition. And you see some of the guys in the front lines, and they've just got the, you know, the top knot.
Yeah.
You know, they've shaved their head and they've got the top knot, and they've got the big mustache and stuff like this. But they are very thankful. And, you know, when I don't know how many times over there they would give us things, give us free rent, you know, just to, you know, they were so thankful that people came from all the way across the world. Because, like, you know, some of the guys I work with from Sweden, you get a Ryanair,
hop, skip and a jump
you get
away.
a Ryanair flight for $90 from you know, Poland, and you're home in an hour and a half.
I mean, they've still gone into an active war zone, so, like, you know, props to them. But yeah, it was a bit easier to get there than you.
And I was talking to a friend of mine, Troy, the other day, he's an ex-paramedic, Afghanistan vet.
Yep.
And like, you know, we were staying in an apartment that, you know, we were paying for, and we're saying, oh my God, like, this has cost us a small fortune coming over here. And that's the thing, like, you'd like to go back. And if I was a bit younger, I'd probably go back, but I just don't have the funds to bankroll trips over there. Because even though the currency is pretty cheap, it's like, I think it was 24, 27, hryvnia to one Aussie dollar. And that goes a long way over there. But like every time you get on a plane and fly from here, it's to Europe. It's not just, it's not to Tasmania or Auckland or somewhere.
Yeah, correct. No, excellent.
So it's,
So you've met Swedes, Brits, Americans, French. Yeah. Who else?
Swiss.
Yeah.
Couple of guys from Switzerland.
Yeah.
Estonia.
Yeah.
France. We had a friend of ours. This is a crazy story. His name's Jace. He's actually got a PhD in psychology. He was teaching in the UK.
Yeah.
A gig there. Comes over, starts working with Task Force Yankee, then later on joins the Legion. He actually served alongside that guy from Melbourne that got captured.
Yeah.
So that's 6 degrees of separation, right? So he's now doing a lot of studies as far as propaganda with Russians and things like this. A really smart guy, but we'd give him heaps. Like, we'd say, buy a French rifle, never fired, only dropped once.
Yeah.
Most popular movie in France is Brokeback Mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. All the usual. Yeah.
So, but the thing was, as Troy said, he says, at the time when we were there at Task Force Yankee, it was like magic in a bottle. Like we had Americans, Brits, and everybody was, there for a common purpose, but got on so well because we were staying in this hostel.
Yeah.
And amazing. Like, guys would go out, do long days training, come back, have some beers, and just get on really well.
Yeah.
And so you don't get that unless you go on. And guys that have been in the military know this. Like, when you go on these deployments, it's hard to replicate that. In Civvy Street.
Yeah.
And that's why guys keep wanting to go back on these trips.
Because the camaraderie.
Training sucks.
Yeah.
And you go over there and you're doing the real job and you're getting paid for it.
Yeah.
In our case, we were doing the real job but not getting any money. And the funny thing was, Gary and myself, because I play guitar a bit and Gary sings. He's got this sort of Texan high sort of voice. And so we thought, well, we'll go into town and we'll play guitar under the railway station there, for morale and things like this. So we turn up at this railway station, we start playing, and when the police comes along, get the hell out of here. So we went, okay, so we moved up the road a little bit, and so, put the hat down and start playing. We're singing things like, Heart of Gold by Neil Young. Take Me Home Country Road by John Denver, and these Ukrainians are walking past, sort of looking at us because it's not their music.
No,
but a couple of boys sat down and they threw some Rivner in the thing, and we went, oh, thank you very much. But it was probably one of the best things I've done in my life.
Yeah,
it was surreal. Strange. Here we are playing music for the Ukrainian people during the war there. And the funny thing was, we made 150 Rivner or something like this. And we gave it to this guy, the guy that's got warrants against him. Yeah. Because he's never got any money, this guy. So we came back and we said, there you go, here's 150 Rivner, to help keep you going. Oh, thanks a lot.
Thanks, mate.
So that's,
Yeah, brilliant. So that's hilarious.
So, but, you got to get on with life. You can't just, sit in a bomb shelter all day worrying. And that you see the Ukrainian people, they know what's going on. They hear the sirens. Everybody does what they have to do to get out of the road. Yeah. It finishes. Everybody
back to work. So, would you say? Obviously, they had the foreign legion and all of you guys in there. Yeah. Would you say that the Ukrainian sovereign fighting force has improved throughout the war?
Yeah, but definitely.
It's just undermanned?
Yeah, from my experience, yes.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the units are hit and miss, but I work with a group called Sabre, and that's run by a Canadian guy called Kevin. And even before I left, he said that he went to a lot of meetings in Canada and in America and in Ukraine where what they're trying to do is sort of standardise the training to a NATO sort of standard. So everybody knows the same sort of drills. Everybody knows, you know, how it goes so that you could be put in one unit to another. And that's what we were trying to accomplish when we were there. And unfortunately, it was a little bit hard at the start because you had American trainers and guys like myself and British trainers, and we're trying to sort of give them something. And what we used to say to them is like, look, this is a bag of tools, okay? You take out of it what you think's going to work for your group.
Yep.
So, like, you know, if you have contact drills and we're saying, you know, this is how we do a contact drill or a break contact drill, if you can come up with a better idea or something that works for you, do it.
But this is a baseline.
But this is what most armies sort of do as a tactic.
Yep.
You know, but if you want to come up with something, like they were so short of tourniquets early on, they actually developed a system where how you can use a belt and thread it in a different way to create an ad hoc tourniquet.
Yeah, right.
They're so smart, these
Ingenious.
guys. They're smart, and they pick the training up like that.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, you'd be training the Iraqis in like 15 minutes. I want to go to sleep. And,
Yeah.
guys, like, you know, what or there's a guy, like they'd say, Craig, can you come next door because there's a guy there, he's collapsed.
Yeah.
What's his problem? He's dehydrated so badly, we've got to put a drip in him.
Yeah.
These are desert people. Like, don't they know how to drink water?
Yeah.
You know, but that's the way it is. Whereas the
they live
Ukrainians
there.
are completely different. So you really got to tailor it a lot differently. And you've only got to say things once to these guys and they just pick it up so good.
Yeah.
They're very, very smart and committed. And, you know, they've got a lot of great, you know, women over there doing a lot of first aid training and up on the front lines, you know, sort of artillery officers and things like this. So, you know, they're not afraid to put their hand up either. So, you know, kudos to them, like, amazing. So that's why when people say to me, oh, you know, Ukraine, you know, is going to fall. It's like, well, they're sort of holding their own at the moment. And
They have been all this time.
Yep, 4 years, still been going on.
Yep.
And, you know, they got that close to the capital. And, you know, my friend that I had the bunya with, he was from Butcher, where they did the atrocities and that. And already, when we went and did the second bunya down the road there, it's already been rebuilt. You wouldn't think, so already the Ukrainian, you'd sort of think, why rebuild a city during a war because it's probably going to get knocked out again.
No, they're not getting back here.
They've rebuilt it,
Yeah.
done it all.
Yeah.
And you're going, wow. So, you know, to me, that's a mindset. That, okay, we're not going to get defeated.
Yeah.
So we can rebuild.
We're not going to let them get
cities.
back here.
Yeah. So we can rebuild our cities.
100%. I love that.
They're really smart.
That's
and I tell you,
awesome.
they just come up with things all the time. You know, they just, I just amazing. Like their weapons. Like, you know, we did this training. They've got a 50 caliber Browning. Okay, most times it's on a tripod. You know, or on a vehicle. They did like a little bipod, so they can get this thing down low.
Yeah.
So you won't expect. You know, a 50 cal to start shooting at you from that position.
Yeah.
And you're going, how good is this? And they're using, you know, grenade launchers, you know, and the dates on them in the 70s. Like these things were used over in Afghanistan, you know, when Ukraine was fighting with the Russians over there.
Yeah.
But, you know, they've managed to sort of jig it and they've got a scale on the side there so they can, you know, put an adjustment really quick and you're going, hey, these guys are good. And they just come up with stuff like that all the time.
Incredible.
So amazing people.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, right. So if you had to put a message to Australia's government, what would you say about the Ukraine conflict?
Well,
are we doing enough?
No. Like they should have given them those helicopters instead of cutting them up. You know, we've got a lot of stores here that they could probably on-sell, you know, or just give to them. You know, there's nothing wrong because they need, you know, the Bushmasters have been a success, you know. Nobody's died in one of those over there. They've got the Hawkeye vehicles. There's a lot of stuff that we can give to Ukraine. And what people seem to miss the point is that they are the tip of the spear at the moment against, you know, the evil Axis. Yeah. You know, you've got Russia there and, you know, whatever people think of Russia, they're not nice people. They never have been. They never will be, you know. And, you know, Putin's trying to make himself to be some great hero in the history of Russian, you know, sort of history there. And, you know, they're not nice people. it's all right saying, oh, well, we don't want Ukraine to join NATO because we don't want NATO on our doorstep. But does that give you any justification to just go and invade a country?
Well, if they invade Ukraine and take it all the way, then they are on the border of NATO because they've come back the other way.
It's Poland.
But yeah,
and
correct.
Then
correct.
And that's the trouble. It's like it's all right saying, oh, we don't like the situation, but they don't like the situation either. The Ukrainians. And as I said, they had all these weapons of mass destruction that they gave up because they were promised that everybody was going to look after them. And look what's happened to them. Okay, and like Ukraine is the bread bowl of Europe. Like they have that much wheat and produce, so it's actually in Europe's interest. And the old saying is like, you're better off fighting a war, in their backyard than in my backyard.
Yeah, correct.
And so I think while they keep supporting Ukraine, but I don't know what else they can do.
Do you think, take away everything that you think about Russia, do you think that giving the Russians an off-ramp to something that, whether it's a trade deal where you start to take away their reliance on China as a buyer and sort of bring them back to what Germany nearly had with the gas deal, try and bring Russia back to being a trading partner. Obviously, it's a very, hard place to come from when you're at war with a European nation. But should there be, in the negotiations, obviously, an off-ramp that means that not Putin can save face, but it gives Russia a pathway back to working with Europe rather than being adversarial?
I've thought about that myself in the past, but it's just trying to come up with a solution. Because if you sort of said, oh, well, we'll let you have so much of Ukraine territory, like, how would we like it? If somebody invaded us, China or somebody, and they said, well, but you can have all of Darwin, and it's like,
well, no,
that's never going to sit well with and Zelensky's made that clear. He is not going to give up, sovereignty to another country. So,
and we can't expect them to either.
So unless there's a trading thing, like it's like America was trying to do with all the minerals, and they say, well, okay, if you get the hell out of our country, we will, give you some minerals and things like this, and we can have Crimea back.
Yeah.
But the irony also is that there's a lot of people who are Russian that have been in Crimea now for so long, they only know it as being Russian.
Yeah, correct. What it is to be in
Crimea. So you kick them out, and they've got an axe to grind.
Yep.
So that is the only problem with all this. And the thing is, a lot of that sort of part in the east in Donbass is like it's destroyed.
Yeah.
Mariupol, those places,
flattened.
They're flattened. So what are you going to do with them? Let them have it, and then wait till you've had NATO training you for 10 years, and then you go and take it back again.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? But I totally agree. There has to be something, so Putin and Russia can save some face here. Otherwise, because he thought he was just going to walk in 3 days. And
correct. And it's sort of shown the world that Russia isn't a superpower anymore. I guess they're not as threatening as they used to be. And so this whole idea that people have been saying that Russia's this big evil bear sitting on the edge of Europe, it's like, well, they're actually not.
They had people conned.
Yeah,
they had the West conned.
They sounded scary, but
because everybody thought we've got all these tanks. That's why the Americans came up with the Cobra, the AA-64 Apache, going, you might have the tanks, but we'll knock them out. Yeah. As they're finding out now, a lot of they've gone back to the old T-62s, and
that's all they got left.
Because they're working. So because they're modern tanks.
Yeah.
They're a lot more sophisticated to repair. So they go back to these old things. It's just. But I'd just like to think that there's some way out. And as I said, I was so disappointed because I thought Trump will come in and he'll broker a deal, and
I'm sure there's back rooms being had and discussions being had, and things will get out. But I just think there needs to be. Obviously not territory. I don't think we should expect Ukraine to cede any territory. No. But having a pathway to, okay, Russia, we've sort of kept you on the outer for the last however long. If you want to come back to being a valued trading partner with the West, and you don't have to rely on China and other places to get oil or have these stuff, we can help you rebuild your economy because your money's worthless now and all of this other stuff. Yeah. If you're willing to just get back in your box.
But that's good conversation between someone like yourself.
Yeah,
and
correct.
Yourself, but you're trying to
But what's
talk
their
to,
point of view?
Exactly. You get like, Putin and all these other people in the room.
And his vision is of, reuniting all of the USSR and bringing it all back under one banner and all that stuff. And it's like, well, no,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, then we'll just keep putting the screws in you. And Ukraine isn't going to fold. So
No, they're not.
No,
They'll go
they
down
just
fighting.
won't.
If it got to that stage, they would go down fighting.
100%.
These people are just so.
No, but their attitude says it all. They've rebuilt the towns. They're not going down.
Yep.
You're not getting back here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're putting a lot of other things in place now for when the war is over. And as I said, they don't want to send all the young kids, to get killed because they're the ones that got the IT skills.
Correct.
They're the ones that AI and all that. They're going to take Ukraine into the future. And that's the difference between the way I see Ukraine and Russia. Russia is still sort of holding on to the past so much, whereas Ukraine is looking to the future. They've thrown off the shackles. And it's a bit confronting, like when you're driving around Ukraine, you go over a bridge and you see a hammer and sickle on a bridge there that was built by Russians years ago. And you go, you learn a bit about the Ukrainian-Russian sort of history. And not all Ukrainians fought with the Russians, a lot fought with the Nazis because they didn't like the communists.
Yeah.
So it's
that whole idea of being caught between two superpowers.
But it's an amazing country though, and I never ever thought I'd ever go to Eastern Europe. Even Poland. Like I just thought I have no interest really going there. But I've got a sort of a love for Ukraine. I've joined the the Ukrainian Association in Victoria here, and so and I was out there protesting when they were protesting over the Russian ships, the Indian ships that were using Russian fuel and things. Right. So I'm sort of doing what I can. To help these people because, you've got to look after the underdog.
100%.
But that's the whole reason for the book was to, give people a bit of an insight into some of the things that happen over there, some of the people, not because, like even now, we don't hear anything about Ukraine anymore.
It's all focused on Iran.
It's all focused on Iran. And I think it's still important and, it's a decent sort of read, I think.
Well, I enjoyed
pages,
it. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of pages.
It's a lot of pages.
Took me a while to get through it. So, but no, it was definitely a good read.
Warts and all.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's real, which is what people want, I think. They need to see the unfiltered version, not the stuff that comes through the TV.
There's a classic story there, when we went to the sort of east of Kyiv and we were talking to some people who had actually been at Yavoriv when it got hit. Yeah. And they were saying that in the early days of the Legion, there were people there pretty much that were lying about who they were. They had this one guy, he was an ex-British Army guy, and he said he'd been a corporal and everything. Apparently this guy had ADHD, he was off his meds. They got attacked. He didn't know what was going on. There were, Ukrainian officers there telling these guys, just sit on your rucksack. And they're going, it's getting dark, like we've got to sleep. So, we'll tell you when to sort of, there was so much indecisiveness. And then some of the guys said, screw this. They went back into the building and then they got hit again. Yeah. And so, and like, on the last trip that I was there, we were there when the kids' hospital got hit in early July. Yeah. And, we were looking outside the balcony and you could see it, the plumes of smoke. And then some of them started coming close and there was an army unit about 200 metres around the corner from us. Yeah. That got hit. Yeah. And so myself and Troy, we were going to get our gear and go to the kids' hospital and help out, because, it's been hit. One of our Ukrainian friends said, don't go, they're going to hit it again. Oh, and they did. So he said, look, if you can, find a basement somewhere and go there. So we sat in the basement of the building where we were, in the car park basement there for over an hour, waiting for it all to sort of go over.
Far out.
So, but it's not only that, but there were snatch squads. And in the early days, like if the sort of Ukrainian sort of secret police sort of thought you were a bad guy, people got shot.
Yeah, far out.
Stuff happened like that. I can remember one night, Mike and I were in our room, sort of, because we were lucky. We stayed at this flash hotel because this American guy had managed to get this hotel. So we were staying there that night, and next minute this shot rings out. And it's like, and I said to Mike, I said, I know what's happened there. Some soldier, he's been there for a while, 2 hours on guard duty, he's playing around with his rifle, next minute, bang. Because everything went really quiet.
Correct. All of a sudden, yeah.
There was no yelling or anything.
No.
Yeah, this guy's had a unauthorised discharge of his weapon. And it's just like, so, and like, they have a thing they call flagging. So like, somebody, got their weapons and they, go like this to you. And it's like, they do that all the time.
Yeah.
And you're going, guys, like, keep... They're sort
Don't
of
point it anywhere that you don't intend to shoot.
Their sort of, weapon skills and that is really sort of lacking. But you've got to give it to them. They've got courage and for all their sort of inadequacies, they're up for the fight. I'll give them that. So, and they were smart in the early days. They get e-bikes. Yeah. And they load it up with a couple of guys with anti-armour weapon and they sort of go towards the Russians. Of course, you don't hear them. No. It's an e-bike. No. Get close enough, boom, let it go, hit a tank, come back. And even like, when Russia looked like they were going to sort of advance through Kyiv. Yeah. Like people were driving past in their cars throwing Molotov cocktails at the Russians. And the hotel that we stayed in on Krashatik there, right where the sort of kitchen is to go in and to the little mess hall there, they had a crate of Molotov cocktails.
Just ready to go, just in case.
And the woman, the cook, she comes out there and she's smoking a cigarette.
Careful.
Right there. So I said to Mike, I think we better move over there. And it's like, they've just got no fear. And it's just like, I've mentioned that in the book. It's like maybe if you come from a culture where, death is always close to tap you on the shoulder, you probably don't worry about it so much. Unlike in our country where it's like, oh my God, somebody got killed in a car crash. That happens all the time over there. Yeah. Or this happens to somebody. Somebody dies in an industrial accident. That's just par for the course. Whereas in Australia, oh my God, kid fell through, put his hand through a glass in KFC the other day. Yeah. It's like, that happens all the time in those countries. So they don't sort of, it's not that they're flippant against death, but they don't sort of, sweat on it.
They're desensitized to it. Yeah.
So that's the way it is. But yeah, I'm very happy with the book and the way it's turned out. And
Where can people get the book?
Well, at the moment, www.vincecraig.com.au.
Awesome.
And that's where they can purchase the book from.
Sweet.
And my publishers, will get the book out to you
very quickly,
very rapidly, and I hope you enjoy. I've got another book as well called Truth Be Told. Yep. So that's sort of that one.
Excellent.
So that was my first sort of go, and I'm trying to come up with an idea about writing another book, but at the moment I'm spent. Yeah. I don't know what to write about, but I'm very proud of that because that book took about 11 months. Yep. My first book took about 11 weeks. Yeah. And it's nowhere near as big as that, but if nothing else, I am proud that I've got out a facet of the war that
story.
A lot of people
haven't seen
or haven't heard about.
100%. So I'll be sure to link it in the video description. Thank you very much. Thank you
for having me on. And
it's been really good.
Enjoyed the chat.
Glad to have you here. We took a while, but we got you here eventually. And definitely worth the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.